Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description.
I am Luffy, Partner System Online, One Piece, by Veltoria. Died in sleep, reborn as a child Luffy. No crew, no powers, just pain and a grindy system. To grow stronger, he must level up others. Each powered-up partner unlocks anime abilities. Fairy tale magic, soul blades, one-hit swords. With friendship, Hellgarp training, and a game UI, he's grinding his way to Pirate King in a darker One Piece world. Adios. Bittersweet.
Luffy stood in position, gripping his wooden sword with both hands and facing Zoro with a serious look. Zoro, on the other hand, carefully studied Luffy, searching for an opening. Time passed, but neither made a move. Luffy was observing. He knew Zoro was likely around 8 or 9 by now, definitely not weak. He probably could handle several low-tier pirates with ease. Zoro didn't move either. Luffy was full of openings. Too many. It was suspicious. Given what his junior had said earlier, that Luffy was incredibly strong, Zoro figured those openings were just bait. Still locked in a silent standoff, Luffy finally grew impatient. He raised his wooden sword and lunged at Zoro. Fast. Zoro barely managed to dodge left, then swung his twin swords upward, aiming for Luffy's exposed arm midair. But Luffy kicked off the ground in an instant, leaping over the counterattack. The two had now traded one strike and one dodge each. Luffy came in again, thrusting his sword like a spear straight at Zoro's chest. Zoro raised all three of his swords, two in hand, one clenched in his mouth, and parried with precise coordination. He was about to retaliate, when he realized he couldn't move. Somehow, Luffy had locked his strength mid-clash. Luffy, noticing his attack had stalled, spun away and reset the distance between them. But Zoro didn't let up. He charged in, crossed his two swords in a deadly X formation, and slashed downward with full force. Luffy swung up his sword to block it, but the moment the blades clashed, his wooden sword shattered into 3 pieces. The sword in Zoro's mouth also came loose, flying straight toward Luffy's neck. With no time to react properly, Luffy raised his right arm and blocked the strike barehanded. So in the end, fists work better. He shook his arm, unaffected. It didn't hurt, but his health bar had definitely dropped. From that alone, he could estimate Zoro's power, and his sword technique bonus. What? Zoro's eyes widened in disbelief. That last strike was strong enough to break solid rock. Yet Luffy stood there, unscathed. Luffy didn't waste a second. While Zoro was frozen in shock, Luffy's fist rocketed forward and smashed into his nose. Zoro flew back, crashing hard into the dojo wall before collapsing in a heap, completely unconscious. The entire dojo fell into stunned silence. Kushiro and the students stared in disbelief. Kushiro wasn't too shocked that Luffy beat one of his students. He knew well that in this world, some people were simply born stronger. But Zoro wasn't just any student, he was Kushiro's personal protege, the best sword talent he'd ever seen. By the age of 9, Zoro could have opened his own dojo. At first, Kushiro hadn't thought much of the fight, Luffy had only used a wooden sword. But now, Zoro had been knocked out in a single punch. A terrifying boy, Kushiro murmured, adjusting his glasses. "Forgive me, Master Kushiro," Luffy said humbly. "My swordsmanship isn't good enough to rely on in a fight." Kushiro shook his head slowly. "Strength is strength. Enemies won't play fair, they'll use their best against your weakness. You've taught Zoro an important lesson today." Luffy scratched his head, unsure how to respond. Thankfully, Kushiro continued, "If you plan to stay here a while, I'll have someone take you to Zoro's room. It's spacious enough for 2. "Thank you, sir." Luffy bowed politely. Night fell. The moon was full, glowing so brightly that anyone who looked at it would feel a pang of homesickness. Zoro stirred and opened his eyes, staring up at the familiar ceiling of his room. Traditional Japanese woodwork, of course, thanks to Kushiro's taste. "Right, the last thing I remember was, you're awake." The voice came from the veranda. Zoro turned his head and saw the boy who had knocked him out, sitting casually on the step between the garden and the room, head tilted, watching him. "You're strong." Zoro said at last, unsure what else to say. Luffy shook his head. No, I'm still weak. Zoro didn't respond, unsure what to make of that answer. After a moment, Luffy spoke again. Do you have a dream? The question caught Zoro off guard. He squinted at the moon, as if searching his memories. My dream is to become the world's greatest swordsman. Whether I'm seen as good or evil, I want my name to echo through the heavens and be known in every corner of the world. Luffy chuckled. That's so cool, even if you're still just a little guy. He turned to look at the moon. That really is an amazing dream. Zoro suddenly felt they were getting along surprisingly well. What about you? He asked. You're already so strong at your age. What's your dream? Luffy stared at the moon, his eyes gradually becoming distant. In his old life, back on Earth, he'd had no great ambitions. Just enough money to live, buy things he liked, take care of his parents, that was all. After coming to this world, he had no vengeance, no tragic backstory, no grand goal. He just wanted to grow stronger. Freer. But if he had to name a dream, he wanted to see his parents again. He wanted them to know he was doing well, even if he wasn't just cooped up at home anymore. He wished they understood that staying by his computer wasn't just for games. He wanted to see their surprised faces when they found out how much he'd saved up on his own. But that dream felt like one he could never reach. Dad, Mom. Luffy slowly stood, still gazing at the moon. A moon just like Earth's. My dream. He raised a hand, as if trying to grasp the moon. If I could, I'd like to go back and see them again. Tears began to flow quietly down his face. Zoro didn't know who Luffy meant by them. Didn't know if they were in this world or not. But somehow, he felt it. His own eyes grew moist too. They stood there silently, gazing up at the full moon for a long, long time. A breeze rustled the leaves. Ripples spread across the pond in the courtyard. Then, Luffy turned toward Zoro and asked, Zoro, do you want to get stronger? Zoro nodded firmly. I've always been trying. No, not that kind of strength. Luffy spread his arms toward the moon. I mean really stronger. Faster. Better. Even with his small frame, the passion behind his words made Zoro take him seriously. Luffy took a deep breath. You know, most of this world is covered by ocean. And that ocean is divided into 4 seas, the Grand Line, and the New World. Zoro didn't speak, just listened. Luffy continued. The 4 seas are mostly filled with ordinary people. Some strong ones appear, sure, but their real goal is always the same, to get to the Grand Line, and then the New World. Zoro's head spun from all this information, but he nodded along. Luffy sighed. You might not realize it, but in the New World, there are swordsmen as strong as Master Kushiro, everywhere. Some of them could beat him easily. Zoro's pupils shrank. That shocked him. To him, Kushiro was strong, maybe not unbeatable, but certainly someone he wouldn't catch up to for a long time. But Luffy said the New World was filled with people like that. Unconsciously, Zoro clenched his fists. He turned to Luffy. What's your point? Luffy grinned, stretched out his hand, and said seriously. Zoro, become my crewmate. Let's grow stronger together. Let's stand at the top of the world. Zoro didn't answer right away. He stared into Luffy's eyes, cool and calm. Why should I? Luffy slowly lowered his hand, smiling. Because I can make you stronger. Faster than anyone else. I can help you become the strongest. Before Zoro could respond, the sliding door between the bedroom and hallway opened. Kushiro stepped in quietly. He approached them, looked up at the moon, and said softly. It's beautiful tonight. Then he turned to Zoro. Zoro, Luffy's right. The world is big, much bigger than this place. He sighed. You're gifted. I'm confident I haven't wasted your potential. But our paths are different. Placing a hand on Zoro's head, he added. I don't know why Luffy said what he did, but I can see the confidence in him. If you truly want your name to reach the heavens, maybe following him isn't a bad choice. Being discussed like that while present was awkward, but Luffy simply held out his hand again and said quietly. I promise. Of course, the choice is yours. Kushiro added. And, sorry for overhearing your conversation. Luffy smirked. Yeah right. Like I'd believe it was an accident. Adults are all the same. And so, the 3 of them fell silent. They sat together in the courtyard, gazing at the full moon, each lost in their own thoughts of the people they missed. The next morning, a soft mist blanketed the entire dojo. Luffy was still fast asleep, sprawled out on his bed. Far from the dojo, in an open clearing, Zoro walked slowly on foot until he arrived before a solitary stone monument. Kuina, if it were you, what would you choose? Zoro sat down before Kuina's grave, leaning back on his hands as he gazed up at the faint sunlight struggling to pierce through the morning fog. The damp air clung to his skin, making each breath feel heavy. Gradually, Zoro felt his consciousness slipping into a strange place. In this place, he had returned to the past, to the day before his final match with Kuina. The duel began, but this time, the outcome was different. As Kuina unleashed a fierce slash, Zoro, with the composure of a seasoned swordsman, parried her blow with one sword and swung another toward her wrist. Clang! Kuina's sword was knocked from her hand, falling to the ground. Zoro stared blankly at the defeated Kuina. But Kuina simply smiled and looked at him with gentle eyes. Zoro, you've gotten stronger. Zoro glanced at his own hand, then back at Kuina. In a quiet voice, he asked, have I really gotten stronger? Kuina gave a soft smile. You really have. But it's not enough. You need to become even stronger. She stepped forward and tapped Zoro lightly on the forehead. You need to become strong enough, that even in heaven, I can still hear your voice. Heaven? What are you talking about, Kuina? Kuina pulled her hand back, her smile tinged with sorrow. I have to go, Zoro. Zoro's eyes widened in confusion. Go. Go where? A strange, heavy feeling welled up inside him, like he already knew the answer, but didn't want to accept it. Suddenly, a monster appeared behind Kuina. It had 3 heads, skeletal white faces, and 9 mantis-like blade arms. Kuina stood behind the creature, smiling through her tears as she waved goodbye. No, Kuina, where are you going? Zoro's face was drenched in tears as he reached out to grab her, desperately, futilely. But she only grew further and further away. Zoro fell to his knees, crying out in anguish. The beast raised one of its massive arms, blade held vertically, and brought it down. In an instant, the world shattered. Everything split apart from where Zoro knelt, crumbling into ash. In the pitch-black void, Zoro pounded the ground with his fists, howling in despair. Drip, drip. Zoro's eyes shot open. You're awake. Luffy stood over him, holding a paper umbrella, shielding them both from the rain. It's raining. Zoro rose to his feet, staring out past the edge of the umbrella. It wasn't clear if he was speaking to Luffy or himself. Luffy stepped forward with the umbrella, his tone calm. Yeah, your face is soaked. Zoro wiped the water from his face, murmuring, is that so? Let's head back. Actually, Luffy had come to find Zoro the moment the skies began to darken. His clothes were damp from the rain, but he knew all too well, the water on Zoro's face wasn't just from the weather. Zoro turned to look once more at Kuina's grave, then down at his own feet. The memory of the dream remained vivid in his mind. Luffy. Zoro suddenly called out. Luffy turned back to face him. Zoro asked, still a little lost, can you really make me stronger? Luffy smiled. That's not up to me, that's up to you. Zoro chuckled softly. Yeah, fair enough. So, what are we going to do next? We're gonna be pirates. Luffy handed the umbrella to Zoro. He was too short to hold it comfortably for both of them. Zoro hesitated for a moment, then lowered his head. After a pause, he muttered, pirates, huh? Doesn't matter. Even if I become a villain, I'll be the strongest one. He couldn't shake the strange, helpless yet familiar feeling that lingered from the dream, the image of that terrifying, world-breaking monster. Taking the umbrella, Zoro walked back toward the dojo with Luffy. But Luffy frowned slightly. Something was odd. Zoro had clearly made up his mind to join him, yet the system hadn't given any notification. Is it because he hasn't officially agreed yet? Inside the dojo, Kushiro sat quietly indoors, his face serene. He watched the silhouettes of Luffy and Zoro, one small, one tall, approaching through the rain. What's meant to happen will happen, Kushiro murmured with a sigh. He had originally planned to let Zoro begin his journey once he was older, but Luffy's strength, and his invitation, had changed his mind. As they entered the building, Luffy stepped in first. Zoro carefully closed the umbrella and set it by the door. Luffy led the way, and Zoro followed closely behind. Hey, this feeling isn't bad. We'll leave tomorrow, Luffy said, turning to Zoro. Take today to get everything ready. Tomorrow, got it. Luffy couldn't help but appreciate Zoro's attitude. He was still just a kid, yet able to stay grounded and composed. Partly because of Luffy's overwhelming strength at such a young age, and partly because of Kuina's death, and the dream that had shaken Zoro to his core that morning. They entered the main hall. Kushiro sat formally in the center, calm and dignified. Beside him were 2 cushions, 3 elegant teacups, and a pot of freshly brewed tea. Master, Zoro greeted him respectfully. Kushiro-sensei, Luffy bowed as well. With his ever-gentle smile, Kushiro gestured to the cushions. Come, sit for a while. Luffy and Zoro took their seats across from him. Every time Luffy saw Kushiro's smiling, squinting eyes, he couldn't help but feel a strange sense of unease. Smiling eyes like that, they're always the scariest. Zoro, Kushiro said, as if he already knew the answer, you've made your decision, haven't you? Zoro's eyes locked straight ahead. Yes, master. I've decided to follow Luffy on his journey. With that, he bowed deeply, slamming his forehead to the floor. I'm sorry, master, but I've decided to become a pirate with Luffy. In all these years, Zoro had called him master only a handful of times. He had never bowed this formally. Kushiro picked up a cup of tea, gently blowing away the steam. The vapor fogged his glasses, making his gaze all the more unreadable. A pirate, huh, he murmured, pausing before continuing. Zoro, always remember, whether you're a pirate, a marine, or just an ordinary man, first and foremost, you are a swordsman. Yes, master. I won't forget. Zoro didn't raise his head, his tears hadn't finished falling. Kushiro stood and took 2 swords from the wall, the Wado Ikimonji and a large grade katana. These were Kuina's. I believe, you'll make good use of them. Kuina. Tears still streaked Zoro's face as he looked up, at his teacher, and at the Wado Ikimonji in his hands. I understand, he said, taking the sword with both hands. I'll reach the top of the world, with this blade by my side. Zoro drew the long katana, nearly as tall as he was, and held it carefully in his hands, savoring its weight. Meanwhile, Luffy and Kushiro continued their conversation. Zoro is the most talented child I've ever trained. I don't know how you became so strong at such a young age, but don't waste Zoro's potential. If you do, it would have been better for him to stay here and build a solid foundation. Kushiro-sensei, I promise you, I have a plan. Believe in me. I'm Monkey D. Luffy, and I'll shake this world to its core. With a mental power energy nearing 200, even if it was less than half of Conqueror's haki, it was already enough to astound and earn Kushiro's trust. In that case, I'll entrust Zoro to you. You won't regret it. The conversation with Kushiro had ended. As a parting gesture, Kushiro handed Luffy a sum of money, considered Zoro's guardianship fee. Luffy didn't refuse. In fact, he had originally planned to ask Kushiro for a loan to prepare for their journey, though he hadn't really intended to pay it back. At a certain level of strength, a little money simply becomes trivial. The rain had stopped. Luffy made his way alone to Shimotsuki village, planning to buy a small boat, some supplies, and a nautical chart along with a compass. Even in the age of advanced ships and seas, most travelers in the Four Blues still relied on these basic tools. Along the way, Luffy conversed silently with the system in his mind. System, explain the partner system to me. Affirmative. The partner system is a crucial mechanism for the host to enhance their strength. The host may recruit up to 10 partners. The host can provide each partner with attribute bonuses equal to host level 5. Partners will, in turn, provide percentage-based attribute boosts to the host, depending on their innate aptitude. For example, if a partner has 200 strength, and their aptitude bonus is 25%, the host gains 225% equals 50 strength. There are 6 aptitude tiers: SSS, SS, S, A, B, and C. Aptitude not only determines the bonus rate but also reflects the partner's growth potential. SSS represents the pinnacle of talent in the One Piece world. Those with it are destined for greatness, assuming they work hard enough. C rank represents ordinary people, with little chance of growing powerful on their own. Each rank provides the following percentage boosts to the host. SSS, 50%. SS, 25%. S, 10%. A, 5%. B, 2%. C, 1%. Partners can also equip gear from the system shop in 3 slots: head, body, and feet. These provide stats only to the partner, not the host. However, the most important feature of the partner system is the exclusive item draw, available once per partner. This item grants substantial stat increases and may even raise a partner's aptitude. Note: while aptitude upgrades do not improve the percentage bonus rate, any raw stats gained still benefit the host. Explanation complete. The sun after the rain felt warmer than usual. A light breeze rustled through the trees, their leaves whispering softly in its wake. On the quiet path between Isshin Dojo and Shimotsuki village, Luffy leaned against a tree, trembling with excitement. By the time the system had explained even half of the partner system, Luffy had already stopped walking. The information was too thrilling to process with a calm mind. This system, it was overwhelming. He could raise his own strength, strengthen his partners, and benefit again from their growth, plus they could wear equipment. Even though there were only 10 slots, it was more than enough for Luffy. For the first time, he truly felt, "I'm not fighting alone anymore. Heaven or earth, I walk with pride." The forest remained as still as ever. It took a long time for Luffy to calm his excitement. Once he regained focus, a new thought occurred to him. "Wait, system, didn't you say I'd get attribute boosts? Why don't I feel any changes? Please draw an exclusive item for your new partner. Once equipped, the partner system will fully activate." Luffy bit his finger thoughtfully. "So I need to pull from a gacha. What kind of items can I get? Rewards are drawn from all fantasy worlds and will be matched to best suit the partner." All fantasy worlds. That line from the system carried a lot of weight. Yes. Once the host's marketplace unlocks, 3 random items from fantasy worlds will refresh monthly. You may purchase any of them. Luffy's grin grew wider with every word. So one day, I could be munching meatballs, yelling, "I'm gonna be king of the pirates." Just like an anime character. Ha 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 ha. The more he thought about it, the funnier it got. He finally burst into laughter. Thankfully, the forest was empty. Otherwise, some poor passerby might have been terrified. System, open the partner interface. I want to check Zoro's stats. Opening. A panel popped up, displaying a 2D portrait of Zoro along with 4 gear slots, exclusive item, head, body, and feet. Beneath it were Zoro's stat points. Name: Roronoa Zoro. Aptitude: SSS. Stamina: 125. Strength: 85. Agility: 70. Mental power: 120. Luffy studied the screen carefully, memorizing every detail. He nodded in satisfaction. As expected of Zoro. SSS rank, top tier talent. Perfect. That means I'll be getting stronger really fast too. He looked up at the sky. Alright, let's finish the prep work. I'll draw the item once we're out at sea. Otherwise, it's going to be hard to explain things to Kushiro. This is one hell of a gift, for both me and Zoro. Shimotsuki Village Port. Luffy spent the entire afternoon gathering supplies, nautical charts, a compass, food, and basic living gear. Then he visited a small shipyard. Usually, the shipwrights there built fishing boats for local fishermen. A request like Luffy's, a custom small boat for travel, was a bit unusual. Fortunately, Luffy didn't ask for anything fancy. He just needed a vessel big enough for 3 people. Plus, he was generous with his money. For a boat that usually cost a few tens of thousands of berries, Luffy threw down over 100,000, asking only that it be ready to sail by tomorrow. Once the deal was made and the boat scheduled to be docked at the port, Luffy left the shipyard. Back at Isshin Dojo, dozens of kids were training with wooden swords, their feet stomping rhythmically on the still damp ground. Kushiro stood at the side with his usual warm smile, yet none of the children dared to slack off under his gaze. When Luffy returned, he greeted Kushiro and learned that Zoro was training in the woods where he usually practiced alone. Luffy thought for a moment, then decided to go find him. They were brothers in arms now, after all. It wouldn't hurt to build some camaraderie early. In the forest clearing, Zoro stood in an offensive stance, both hands gripping Wado Ikimonji tightly. A soft breeze stirred the dust, forming little cyclones at his feet. A single leaf drifted down in the wind, landing gently on the blade's edge. Without a sound, the leaf split cleanly in two and fell at Zoro's feet. Zoro's eyes snapped open. With a subtle motion, he slashed forward. A man-sized boulder in front of him split neatly down the middle. The top half slid down the blade's line, hitting the ground with a crash and shattering into pieces. On the remaining stone, a glass smooth-cut surface gleamed in the sun. "That's one hell of a sword," Luffy said, emerging with a grin from the far side of the woods. Zoro gave the blade a thoughtful glance, then quietly sheathed it. "Something you need, Luffy?" he asked. Luffy casually reached up and patted Zoro on the shoulder. "Everything's ready. We can set sail tomorrow." Zoro looked around the training grounds where he had spent so many years. His voice dropped to a whisper. "So, it's time to go, huh, Kuina?" What was that?" Zoro's voice had been so soft that Luffy didn't catch it. "It's nothing," Zoro replied quickly. He didn't want anyone to see his softer side. "Let's head back, Luffy. Master said he's making an exception today, he's throwing us a farewell feast." "Subarashi. You know, I've never had a party thrown for me before. This'll be my first time as the main guest." Seeing Luffy's bright, confident smile, the sadness in Zoro's heart seemed to fade just a little. By noon the next day, a messenger from the shipyard arrived at Isshin Dojo to inform Luffy that the ship was completed and now docked at the port. All the supplies Luffy had stored at the yard had already been loaded onto the vessel as well. After spending the whole morning waiting, Luffy finally perked up. Now that's service. At the port, the vast ocean stretched endlessly before them, filling the heart with wanderlust. A lone news coup flew overhead, circled once after spotting no one worth mugging, then flapped away. Back onshore, Kushiro stood alongside a group of young dojo students, watching the departing ship slowly fade into the horizon. Several of the children cried openly. Whenever the master wasn't around, they had always looked up to Zoro as their dependable senior. For kids their age, the pain of parting was still hard to handle. Aboard the ship, at the stern, Luffy stood waving continuously at Kushiro and the others, not stopping until the port completely disappeared from view. He then made his way to the bow, where Zoro sat silently, staring straight ahead. "Aren't you going to say goodbye to your master and junior students?" Luffy asked. It's not like I'm a kid or anything. There's nothing to say." Zoro's voice cracked mid-sentence, and he sniffled in such a way that Luffy could barely make out what he was saying. Glancing at the puddle that had formed at Zoro's feet, Luffy tactfully replied. "All right then, I'll go check the nautical charts. Keep an eye on our heading, don't let us drift off course." "Oh okay." Zoro's voice grew softer, clearly aware that Luffy had noticed. Luffy opened the cabin door and headed below deck. "System, I've already got a ship, why hasn't the sailing system activated yet?" Answer. To activate the sailing system, the following conditions must be met. The ship must have a name. It must be able to carry at least 10 people. It must fly a flag. Currently, your ship meets none of these criteria. Activation denied. Figures. Luffy let out a resigned sigh. As expected, every part of the system came with its own set of hoops to jump through. Still, just thinking about what was coming next made him giddy again. Rubbing his hands together in anticipation, he asked. "System, can I now draw Zoro's exclusive item?" The host may initiate the draw at any time. Simply open the partner interface, select your new partner, and mentally command, "Draw exclusive item." Alright. Luffy, already used to the process, opened Zoro's partner panel in his mind and thought. Draw exclusive item. A giant spinning wheel appeared in front of him, decorated with all kinds of swords, scrolls, and bizarre-looking trinkets. Luffy hadn't even issued a start command, yet the wheel began spinning on its own, faster and faster, until everything became a blur. Finally, it stopped. The pointer landed on a glowing blue substance. It was one of those things Luffy had zero clue about. Ding! The host has acquired Zanpakuto Essence. Item placed in your inventory. Please check. Zanpakuto. Luffy froze. Yesterday, he'd been fantasizing about learning the Rasengan, today he got a Zanpakuto. Wait a second, that glowing blue blob doesn't look like a sword at all. Please open your inventory and check. Right, inventory. Luffy opened his inventory panel. Sure enough, the first slot contained a swirling blue mass. He tapped it with his mind, and a new interface appeared. Zanpakuto Essence. When applied to a sword with a soul, it transforms it into a Zanpakuto, a soul-bound blade used by Shinigami. Each Zanpakuto takes shape and power based on the soul of its wielder. By learning its name and forging a bond with it, the user unlocks its true potential. After reading the description, Luffy thought to himself, a soul-bound weapon, huh? Maybe a Zanpakuto is the perfect match for Zoro. Thinking about Zoro's eerie aura and mental power-like presence, Luffy grew more and more excited. Can Wado Ikimonji even qualify as a soul-bound blade? I hope so. If it doesn't, I doubt any blade in this world would. If it didn't work, it would be a huge pain. No time to waste. Luffy retrieved the Zanpakuto essence from his inventory. A ball of blue light appeared in his hand. Oddly enough, it had no weight at all, yet still felt distinctly there in his grip. Outside the cabin, while Luffy was chatting with the system, Zoro had been calmly monitoring their course from the deck, trying to calm his emotions as the sea breeze cooled his face. By the time Luffy reappeared, Zoro had moved past his earlier sadness. Luffy was just about to speak when he noticed something odd. He glanced up at the sun, then looked back at Zoro. Zoro, what heading did I tell you to follow earlier when I gave you the map? Zoro tilted his head in confusion. You said 15.3 degrees southwest, didn't you? Southwest. Yeah, you literally just said that to me. Luffy's legs wobbled slightly. He stumbled over to the compass mounted on the railing and stammered. Then why the hell are we heading due east? Huh? Zoro froze. He went silent, realizing exactly what happened. Luffy felt like smacking himself. How could he have forgotten Zoro's world-class sense of direction, or lack thereof? But honestly, he couldn't blame himself completely. Even with clear navigation tools, Zoro had still managed to steer the ship completely off course. Zoro, as captain, I'm giving you your first official order. You are not allowed to steer the ship alone ever again. Also, no wandering off unsupervised. Zoro, fully aware he'd messed up, scratched his head awkwardly. Got it, Captain. Seeing that Zoro was owning up to his mistake, Luffy decided not to press the issue further. After all, part of this was his own fault for forgetting Zoro's infamous directional issues. He took a breath and said, anyway, the real reason I came to find you, it's something much more important. Zoro looked at him seriously and nodded for him to continue. Why are you following me? That matters to you, right? Zoro blinked. Wait, you mean, can we start training now? At the mention of strength, his eyes lit up instantly. Not training. I've got something better. Luffy held up the glowing orb and smiled. Take out your sword. Without question, Zoro handed him Wado Ikimonji. For some reason, Zoro felt an immense pressure coming from the blue orb in Luffy's hand. He could even feel his soul reacting to it. Luffy held the sword in one hand and pressed the Zanpakuto essence against it with the other. The blue light melted into the blade. A brief flash, then it was done. The sword still looked the same, except the hilt had turned a pure white. That's it. System. That's all. Luffy yelled internally, disappointed. He'd waited so long, only to see a quick flash of blue. The system calmly replied, no need for panic. The sword before you is now a genuine Zanpakuto. However, it has yet to truly belong to Zoro. Then what's left to do? You must stab the Zanpakuto into Zoro's body. Luffy's eyes widened. You want me to stab him? Correct. Only by doing this can the sword fully merge with his soul and become his Zanpakuto. I see. Understanding now, Luffy looked up at Zoro. Zoro flinched at the sudden intensity in his captain's gaze. He'd watched Luffy fuse the orb into the blade, only to see Luffy freeze in place afterward, his expression changing repeatedly. Frankly, it had freaked him out a little. Luffy finally spoke. Zoro, I've found a way to help you grow stronger, fast. Really? How? The moment strength was mentioned again, Zoro's eyes sparkled with hope. To become the world's greatest swordsman, he couldn't afford to miss any opportunity. Seeing how excited Zoro was, Luffy scratched his head awkwardly. And then said, let me stab you. Do it, huh? Zoro spread his arms and turned his chest toward Luffy. "Just do it, like you said." Luffy lowered his gaze, stunned for a moment. When he looked up again, there was a soft, satisfied smile on his face. The feeling of being trusted, it was incredible. "I won't let you down," Luffy said, drawing Wado Ikimonji and pointing the tip toward Zoro's heart. Zoro grinned, showing his usual sharp teeth. "And I won't do anything I'll regret ever again." Under the vast blue sky, atop the calm sea, two boys stood on a small boat. The blade slowly approached Zoro's chest. Luffy's smile faded, replaced by a solemn expression. "Zoro, with a partner like you, I won't feel lonely on this ocean." With that, he thrust the sword forward, straight into Zoro's chest. The blade pierced slowly into his body, yet not a single wound appeared. Wado Ikimonji vanished completely into him, and Zoro collapsed, unconscious. Luffy carried him into the cabin and laid him on the bed he had prepared for him. "Rest well. From here on out, it's up to you." Returning to the deck, Luffy picked up the compass and took the helm. The sea breeze brushed past his ears. Everything was calm again. Elsewhere, Zoro opened his eyes to find himself in a strange land. The sky was dark and heavy, shrouded in thick black mist. The ground glowed with an eerie red light, and molten lava bubbled in places, snaking through cracked earth. Zoro looked around, bewildered. Is this hell? He began to cautiously explore. Time passed. No matter how far he walked, it felt like he was moving, but the scenery never changed. Same oppressive sky. Same terrifying aura. Eventually, Zoro stopped creeping and just walked, alert but more determined. He walked for what felt like an entire day and night. Finally, exhausted, he slumped against a red-hot rock and gazed up at the smoky sky. "I've walked so far and nothing's changed. Maybe I'm doing something wrong," Zoro muttered. Through it all, he never once doubted Luffy. Even if this really was hell, he believed there would be a path to becoming stronger. That's just how Zoro thought. Drifting off in a daze, Zoro eventually fell asleep. The sky remained oppressive. The ground stayed dim and scorched. But this time, something was different. "Zoro! Zoro!" A soft, familiar voice echoed through his soul. Zoro stirred, slowly opening his eyes. "Kuina," he murmured. Seeing the long-lost figure he had yearned for, Zoro didn't even react with shock. So it really is just a dream. He rolled over and closed his eyes again, mumbling sleepily. But Kuina, having spent all that effort to wake him up, was not having it. Fuming, she pinched his ear, hard, and twisted. "Dream your damn head." Og. The pain jolted Zoro fully awake. He sprang to his feet, clutching his ear. Rubbing the sting away, the sharp ache finally dulled. Then, something clicked. Zoro stiffened. He raised his head slowly, eyes wide. Kuina. He rubbed his eyes again, afraid that pressing too hard might make her vanish. Kuina turned away playfully and said with a sweet smile. "Idiot. Did you really forget me after all this time?" Zoro blinked. He had never seen Kuina act so cute before. In the past, the two had always been locked in intense training. Kuina's dedication and iron will could humble even adults. And yet now, she looked like someone entirely different. Puzzled, Zoro asked, "So, this really is hell?" Kuina's smile faded. She nodded solemnly. "Yeah, this is hell." "Then that means I died." Zoro found it hard to believe. Even with the hellish surroundings, he didn't think Luffy would ever betray him. He thought back to Luffy's eyes when he plunged the blade into his chest, full of determination, but no malice. He hadn't known Luffy long, but somehow, it felt like fate that they'd met. AWRROOO. The ground shook beneath Zoro's feet. A monstrous roar echoed in the distance. "Crap, we've been found," Kuina cried. She grabbed Zoro's hand and took off running. Zoro, still unclear on what was going on, followed behind. "What was that sound, Kuina?" Without even turning around, she shouted back. "I don't know exactly. Just that it's a terrifying beast. Huge body, 3 heads, 9 arms, and a white bone mask covering its face." As she described it, the image began to form clearly in Zoro's mind. His eyes narrowed. It was exactly the same monster from his dream that morning. The one that took Kuina away. Damn it. Lost in thought, Zoro didn't realize Kuina had come to a sudden stop. He looked up and followed her gaze. There, directly in front of them, stood the monster. 3 heads, 9 arms, white bone mask. Its grotesque form loomed closer with every step. Instinctively, both Zoro and Kuina took a step back. Zoro clenched his fists. He didn't want their reunion to end so quickly. "Run back, now," he shouted. The monster in his dream had unleashed a destructive power he knew he couldn't match. Kuina, however, shook her head calmly. "It's no use. We can't outrun it." Zoro turned to her, panicked. "Then you go. I'll draw it away." Without waiting for an answer, he took a step forward. But Kuina caught his arm. Her eyes met his, soft, unwavering. "Zoro, you've gotten stronger, haven't you?" "Of course I have. But that thing's way beyond us. I can buy you time, just go." Though he noticed her odd tone, Zoro's priority was still protecting her. Kuina smiled gently. "Then let's fight it, together." As she said this, her body began to glow with a radiant white light. The light gradually shrank, and Kuina vanished. In her place, appearing in Zoro's hand, was a sword. Wado Ikimanji. But somehow, it felt different. With Kuina, now transformed into a blade, in his hands, Zoro tested the weight and grip. It felt exactly the same as when he used Wado Ikimanji before. Then Kuina's voice echoed inside his mind. "Don't just stand there, Zoro. The monster's coming." "Kuina." Zoro muttered in confusion. Her voice snapped back, anxious and urgent. "Yes, it's me. Now move. Dodge." In an instant, the monster was upon him, one of its arms raised high and swinging down like an axe. Zoro spun around and sprinted away, narrowly avoiding the blow. The monster's strike carved a massive 2-meter trench into the ground, its power undeniable. Seeing the destruction it caused, Zoro finally relaxed a little. "This one's nothing like the monster in my dream. I thought I was dead for sure." The creature was dangerous, yes, but not invincible. If there was even the slightest chance of victory, that was enough for Zoro. Missing its mark, the beast roared and lunged after Zoro like a starving animal chasing prey. Its heavy, thunderous footsteps grew closer with each second. Zoro gripped his sword tighter. The monster lunged again, its 9 blade-like arms raised into a massive arc, trapping Zoro in a deadly fan of steel. Just as the blades descended, Zoro raised Wado Ikimanji above his head. Each strike sliced through the air with a roar of pressure. But Zoro wasn't overwhelmed. His instincts kicked in, he stepped onto one blade mid-swing, pushed off with his leg, and vaulted left, narrowly dodging the rest of the slashes. However, with 9 arms in constant motion, the monster's first strike had already reset by the time Zoro dodged the last. Still mid-air, with nowhere to evade, Zoro crossed his blade in front of his chest. The next blow crashed into his guard, creating a massive shockwave that scattered stones and dust. Zoro used the force of the impact to launch himself backward, landing in a tumble before rolling hard across the ground. Panting, he sprang to his feet and readied himself again. The monster was relentless. Its blade arms slammed down like mountains, each slash colder and more bone-chilling than the last. Zoro swung desperately, parrying strike after strike in a blinding blur of steel. Clang! After another powerful clash, Zoro used the opening to widen the gap between them. Beads of sweat lined his forehead, his face tight with concentration. "This can't go on," he thought grimly. "The rhythm of the fight is all in its favor. I can't land a single clean hit like this." Brushing the sweat from his brow, Zoro raised his blade again. Then Kuina's voice echoed once more in his mind. "Zoro, stop relying on brute force." Her words brought a strange calm to his heart. "No brute force. That's right." Zoro suddenly remembered something his teacher Kushiro had once said. Back when he first joined Isshin Dojo, he'd asked a naive question. "Sensei, is it true that some swordsmen can cut through iron like butter?" He remembered how Kushiro had tried to demonstrate by slicing a falling sheet of paper. But the wind pressure from his swing made the paper drift out of the blade's path. Then the teacher said quietly, "There exists a kind of swordsman in this world who can cut through nothing, and yet cut through iron like silk. To me, the strongest sword is one that protects what it must and cuts only what it needs to. Nothing more." Those words echoed in his mind. Zoro thought of why he came here. Leaving behind Isshin Dojo, Kuina's home, sailing off into the unknown with Luffy, letting himself be stabbed by his own captain. What was it all for? He remembered Kushiru's unwavering guidance. He remembered that night under the moon, when he and Kuina had made their shared promise. He remembered Luffy's simple words, "I can make you stronger." And how he'd followed without hesitation. Zoro slowly lifted his head. His eyes now shimmered with a faint red glow, darker than blood and fiercer than flame. They were terrifying, even more so than the monster. But the beast didn't give him time to rest. The sky was still dark. The ground was still cracked and dim. This silent hellscape now echoed with the sharp clang of blades. Zoro met each of the monster's attacks, again, and again, and again. Finally, after another furious volley, Zoro saw his opening. He sheathed his blade. Itoryu's secret technique, Iijutsu. A flash of green light tore through the air. In an instant, Zoro vanished from in front of the monster, and appeared behind it. Wado Ikimonji slid smoothly back into its sheath. SSST. A thin red line formed on the monster's left leg. Blood burst forth in a stream. Still, the monster didn't flinch. It turned slowly, wounded but unfazed. It seemed to sense that Zoro was near his limit. Taking one step back, it raised all 9 blades to shoulder height. Each one glowed with a deadly red aura, then surged forward, aimed directly at Zoro's back. Zoro remained still, unmoving, facing away. He seemed lost in the aftermath of his last attack, unresponsive. Closer and closer the monster came. Its injury didn't slow it. The blades were about to pierce Zoro's flesh. Just then, Zoro turned. His eyes snapped open. And in that moment, the red glow in his pupils seemed to pierce the very fabric of the world. The black fog overhead scattered. The cracked earth healed. The moon rose high in a clear night sky. The repaired ground sprouted fresh green grass, swaying gently in the breeze. The world had changed. Only the crimson blades and Zoro remained frozen in the final moment before the clash. Zoro bent his knees, drawing Wado Ikimonji upright along his right side. The tip of the sheath pointed behind his left leg, one hand gripping the scabbard, the other poised on the hilt. I never understood Sensei's words. But I do know this, my swordsmanship is all about never giving up. Zoro's crimson eyes widened. A wild, fearless grin stretched across his face. I can see it. I can feel it. The breath of the wind, the breath of the grass, and your breath too. This is it, the power to cut through steel. Itoryu, Iijutsu, Shishi Sunsun. Zoro and the monster passed each other like phantoms. Time seemed to pause. Crack, crack, crash. The monster's 9 arms shattered into fragments, falling like confetti to the grass. Splurt. A geyser of blood sprayed from its waist. Its body split cleanly in two, and both halves dropped to the ground. Moments later, the monster's corpse vanished without a trace. Left in its place was a single sword. Black hilt. Black sheath. You really did it, Zoro. The sword in Zoro's hand began to shine once more, and from the blinding light, Kuina reappeared. You actually defeated it, seems like you've finally reached the level of a true swordsman. With a calm smile, she began walking toward the black blade that had formed from the monster's remains. Wait. Zoro stepped in front of her, blocking her path. Kuina stared at Zoro, who was now eyeing her with clear suspicion. She smirked coldly. Interesting, when did you figure it out? From the very beginning, Zoro replied flatly, his tone devoid of emotion. Her icy expression cracked slightly as she snapped. Impossible. If you say so, Zoro replied dismissively, not bothering to argue. Instead, he turned and picked up the black sword. Above, the moon continued to shine down, casting a gentle light over the world. But in the shadows where the moon couldn't reach, something stirred. The massive form of the beast, supposedly cut in half, was slowly rising once again. Kuina spoke in a cold voice. It's called the beast. Zoro narrowed his eyes. So, you led me into this fight from the very start, didn't you? In one hand, he held the black sword. It was completely pitch black, though its shape resembled Wado Ikimonji. With the other hand, he ran his fingers along the blade, feeling a strange surge of energy coursing through him. Half of that power felt like it came from within his own body. But the other half, he could clearly feel it flowing from the sword into him. Staring at Kuina, now standing alongside the beast, Zoro scoffed. If you'd acted like this from the beginning, I might not have figured it out so quickly. A white sword, Wado Ikimonji, manifested in Kuina's hand. She dropped into a fighting stance. Zoro did the same, taking a battle-ready posture with the black blade. Meanwhile, in the real world, Luffy had been stuck on the boat, staring at the ocean for over a day, bored out of his mind. The sea stretched endlessly in all directions, and his only companion was still unconscious. He lay on the deck, basking in the sun, tossing the compass up into the air and catching it repeatedly. Suddenly, ding! Zoro has successfully bound his exclusive weapon. Attribute bonus complete. Host, please check your status panel. Huh, whoa. Startled by the system's sudden voice, Luffy almost dropped the compass. If it broke, they'd be completely lost at sea. Placing it carefully beside him, Luffy eagerly opened his status window. Even though he could already feel his body getting stronger, it was always better seeing the numbers. Character: Monkey D. Luffy. Level: 12. Express: 262,000. HP: 3,500. Stamina: 350. Strength: 212. Agility: 201. Mental power: 345. Yes. Luffy pumped his fist in the air and shouted with joy. His strength had more than doubled in an instant, and this was just from his first crewmate. If he recruited a second, a third. Man, this is awesome. It was the year 1510 of the sea calendar. Luffy was only 7 years old, yet already nearly as strong as the original Luffy had been when he first set out to sea. Imagine how strong I'll be in 10 years. Suddenly, he noticed something odd. His mental power stat had increased from 345 to 346. System, what's with that 1-point boost to mental power? Answer: Zoro's mental power attribute increased by 2 points. Huh, wait, Zoro still hasn't woken up. It's completely quiet in the cabin. Zoro is currently undergoing the Shikai trial for his Zanpakuto within his mental power world. Luffy bit his thumb, eyes lighting up. So that means, Zoro's about to get even stronger. Reminder: not yet. Zoro's current strength is insufficient to complete the Shikai trial. Luffy sighed in disappointment. Aw man, guess I'll just have to wait, huh? Additional reminder: this, wait, may be a long one. What? Back in Zoro's mental power world. Clang, clang, flashes of black and white collided again and again. The constant ringing of metal on metal echoed all around. Crack, 2 blades locked together. Both fighters stood frozen mid-clash. The ground beneath them crumbled and cracked from the pressure. Winds howled outward in every direction. Zoro wore a crazed grin of both pain and satisfaction. You're strong, I'll give you that. Kuina's expression remained composed. Of course, I'm your reflection, after all. Physically, skill-wise, we're exactly the same. Shing. Zoro pulled back the black blade, panting heavily. Need a break? Kuina asked, flashing a rare sweet smile. Ha, ha. Zoro caught his breath, then raised his sword once more. No need. Their silhouettes blurred into another fierce exchange. With every clash, their surroundings took even more damage. The once lush field was now nothing but scorched, cratered earth. No one knew how long the battle had raged on. The moon still hung in the sky, but the world beneath it had been reduced to ruins. Both fighters were covered in cuts and bruises. They paused again, wordlessly agreeing on a brief respite. Though Kuina's body was battered, her mental power burned just as fiercely. Zoro panted, exhausted. I don't want to keep doing this, he muttered. Kuina, equally drained, replied. Then what will you do? You can't defeat me. If you grow stronger, I'll grow stronger too. That's true. Zoro closed his eyes. But all I need is one strike. One attack strong enough to kill even myself. Ooh, sounds impressive. She smiled again. Kuina always smiled when they fought seriously. Let's find out. Zoro's lips curled into a mysterious grin. He planted the tip of the black blade into the ground, lowering his body into a stance with the blade angled at his right side. A terrifying aura began to rise around him. Behind him, a towering, bestial silhouette formed, so overwhelming that even Kuina began to tense up. Her smile faded slightly. She gripped her sword tighter. As the pressure peaked, Zoro's eyes flew open. A wild, beast-like force burst out from him. Itoryu Ei. Shi sun sun. Zoro launched forward, each step carving deep imprints into the ground. He closed the distance instantly, slashing upward in a dazzling arc of steel, like a bird taking flight. Kuina tried to block, but realized she had no time to evade. She quickly raised her blade. Crack! Her hands were suddenly empty. Stunned, she watched Wado Ikimonji fly through the air, spinning several times before embedding itself in the earth. Zoro had finally won. Under the moonlight, the girl's hair fluttered in the wind. The boy stood before her, blade pointed at her throat. Who are you really? Zoro asked at last. Kuina looked at him calmly and said, I am Kuina, but not the real Kuina. I am the form born from your memories and emotions, your hopes and dreams, given shape through the power of your Zanpakuto. At that moment, the beast walked over from the shadows. Its deep voice rumbled. And I am the embodiment of your raw instinct and savagery. Wait. Zoro lowered his sword. What exactly is a Zanpakuto? The beast answered. A Zanpakuto is the physical manifestation of your soul, it is both sword and self. Kuina added. Earlier, Luffy fused an unbound Zanpakuto into your soul. Through your obsession and resolve, that sword took shape and divided into 3 forms. I am one. The beast is the second. We are your strength, made manifest. The beast continued. Only by defeating all 3 of us can you complete the Shikai, the first release of your Zanpakuto, and leave this place. Then where's the third one? Zoro demanded. Kuina shook her head. The third can't appear yet. Right now, you're nowhere near strong enough to face him. Zoro tried to respond, but the beast interrupted. It's too soon. But know this, we won't harm you now. You've defeated us. We now follow you. Kuina said softly. For now, stay here and train. Don't worry about the outside world. Your Zanpakuto will absorb mental power energy to keep your body gnawed his fists tightly, then slowly let go. Still too weak, I need to get stronger, fast. Kuina said nothing. The beast raised one massive paw in a rare gesture of comfort. Don't be so hard on yourself. After all, the third is the embodiment of your potential and your future. He is your strongest blade. Note. The beast refers to Renji Aburai's Zanpakuto, Zabumeru from Bleach. Its mental power takes the form of a white baboon with a snake tail, symbolizing wild, untamed power. He said, in the storm, this little pain means nothing, wipe away your tears, and don't ask why. A small boat drifted gently across the vast open sea, swaying with the wind. From it, a voice sang loudly and freely. Luffy wrung out his soaking wet shirt and pants with all his strength, laying them out across the deck to dry under the warm sun. Just the night before, a violent storm had come crashing down upon him. Alone, he had to manage the sails and steer the rudder, something he was far from experienced at. Amidst a chaotic scramble, he barely managed to keep the boat from capsizing. When the storm finally passed the next morning, he went below deck only to find Zoro buried under a pile of toppled furniture and supplies. It took Luffy a good half-hour just to drag Zoro out and toss him aside. Only then did he begin organizing the mess, closets, beds, and scattered items. By the time everything was cleaned up, Luffy realized he was still in his rain-drenched clothes, cold and damp. So, he took them off and gave them a quick wash. Not like there was anyone out here in the middle of the sea, anyway, and Zoro was still completely unconscious. Who knew when he'd wake up? Clothes are overrated, Luffy thought, then stretched out naked on the deck for a full-body sunbath. Just as Luffy was savoring his peaceful, carefree moment. Far off in the same stretch of ocean, a large ship was slowly cutting through the waves. From a bird's-eye view, the 2 ships, Luffy's small one and the massive vessel, were headed straight toward each other, set to cross paths. Aboard the pirate ship, a pirate with a bizarre hairstyle spoke with a hulking brute beside him. By the giant's side rested a massive spiked warhammer taller than a grown man. Captain, we lost 6 men in last night's storm, reported the odd-haired pirate. The pirate captain stroked his chin thoughtfully. No matter. We've still got over 100. If they couldn't survive that, they were just useless deadweights. Yes, Captain. One more thing, we also lost a lot of food. What's left will only last us about a week. Useless trash. The captain roared, slapping the pirate so hard he was sent flying. Then, turning to another pirate nearby, he growled. How far is the nearest island? The trembling pirate stammered. The closest one is Kokoyashi village, but it's really close to a marine base. Maybe we shouldn't, Og. Before he could finish, the captain kicked him clear across the deck. I don't need your damn advice. The captain barked. Then, he shouted toward the crow's nest. Keep your eyes peeled. If you spot any ships, we're charging in immediately. Aye, Captain. The lookout didn't dare hesitate. No sooner had he answered than another lookout yelled. 30 degrees northeast. A small vessel spotted. If it stays on course, we'll intercept it in 40 minutes. The captain narrowed his eyes. I'm not waiting 40 minutes. Full speed ahead, take that ship. Over a dozen pirates around him cheered in response and quickly sprang into action, adjusting the sails and picking up speed. Back on Luffy's ship, dizzy and exhausted from the storm, Luffy had given up caring. He half-heartedly adjusted the rudder back to its old angle and let fate steer him. He lay stark naked on the deck, sound asleep. Who knew how much time passed before? Boom! A loud crash startled Luffy awake. The sound of shouting followed. He rubbed his eyes and stood up, only to see a giant pirate ship looming right beside his own. Its railings were packed with pirates glaring down at him. Captain, looks like no one's on this boat. One short pirate said to a tall one. Of course, short for a pirate still meant 3 times Luffy's height. I'm right here, idiot. Luffy yelled, then realized, he was still naked. Flustered, he grabbed his now sun-dried clothes and, in full view of over 100 pirates, casually dressed himself without shame. In the meantime, a boarding plank was lowered between the ships. The pirate captain and about 20 of his crew stepped onto Luffy's boat, nearly overcrowding it. A pirate next to the captain glanced around and said, "Looks like a shipwreck survivor, just a kid left. Odd that such a tiny boat made it this far into the open sea." The captain slung his spiked warhammer over his shoulder. "Who cares why? Search the boat. Bring back anything useful. As for this piece of junk, I wouldn't take it even if you gave it to me." The 20 pirates began ransacking the ship, grabbing food, supplies, anything they could find. Luffy stood by silently, a faint amused smile playing at his lips. A few minutes later, one pirate returned carrying Zoro and dumped him next to Luffy. "Captain, we found a stash of food and supplies below deck. Also, 2 kids who might be shipwreck survivors. Do we bring them with us?" The captain glanced over at Luffy and Zoro. "Forget it. Too young. Can't fight, can't even scrub the deck, just more mouths to feed. I'll put 'em out of their misery. Better than starving to death on an empty boat. Ha 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 ha." With that, he hefted his massive warhammer and walked toward Luffy. None of the pirates nearby batted an eye. They smiled, casually watching their captain prepare to execute 2 kids. To them, this was one of his nicer decisions. A few pirates back on the main ship, however, covered their eyes, unable to bear the sight. The captain reached Luffy, laughing nastily. If Luffy hadn't been so short, the man's foul breath alone would have knocked him unconscious. "Kid, I'm the captain of the Raging Hammer Pirates. And today, I'm sending you to hell. Got any last words? Ha 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 ha." Luffy thought to himself, anyone who laughs like that before killing someone is either an idiot or a lunatic. Today, clearly, it was the former. Not talking. Fine. Saves me the trouble. The captain raised his massive warhammer and swung it down toward Luffy's skull. Pang! A thunderous clang rang out. The captain froze in disbelief. Luffy had stopped the blow, with one hand. "You said something wrong just now," Luffy said calmly. What? The captain stammered, suddenly realizing he'd picked the wrong target. "I'm actually great at chores." Luffy smiled brightly. Then vanished. Og! Help! No! Screams erupted from all around. The captain could only watch in horror as every one of the pirates on Luffy's boat was struck down, each with a hole punched through their chest or gut. Some died instantly. Others writhed in pain, but none would survive. Sweat soaked through the captain's clothes. His throat tightened. Ding! The host has killed a regular pirate. Express 25. Ding! The host has killed a regular pirate. Express 28. Ding! The host has killed a regular pirate. Express 36. Luffy's grin widened with every notification. He turned to the trembling captain. "So, Captain, how do you like my little chore work?" "Who the hell are you?" The man shouted, eyes wild with fear. Luffy smirked. Someone you could never be. He dropped a reference from his past life, then dashed forward. With one graceful leap, he landed right in front of the pirate captain. He reached out, and with fingers like steel, pierced the man's chest and crushed his heart. As the captain collapsed, all he could think about was, what did that even mean? And then he died, confused and completely defeated. Ding! The host has killed a regular pirate. Express 625. The moment the system chimed, Luffy's smile grew even wider. He turned his gaze to the pirates still aboard the enemy ship, eyeing them like they were a buffet of delicious prey. Terrified, the pirates took a synchronized step back under his gaze. Quick! Get rid of the boarding plank! One quick-witted pirate shouted. The ones closest to the connecting plank moved like they'd been handed a lifeline. In a frantic scramble, they unlocked the mechanisms and shoved the plank into the sea. Hooray! The pirates on deck cheered loudly as the plank splashed into the water. Luffy simply looked at them like they were a bunch of fools. He walked to the ship's edge, placed a foot on the railing, and with a light push, launched himself nearly 10 meters, landing smoothly behind the celebrating pirates. Excuse me, what's everyone so happy about? Luffy asked sweetly, smiling like an innocent child. He looked like an adorable little boy, if you ignored the blood-stained red clothes and the still dripping blood from his right hand. The entire ship fell into stunned silence. Some pirates trembled in fear, others collapsed to their knees. A few even leapt into the sea out of sheer panic. Several brutish-looking pirates were shoved to the front, weapons in hand, clearly being offered as sacrificial lambs. As Luffy calmly stepped toward them, many pirates were visibly reaching their mental breaking point. Help! He's not human, he's a demon. Damn it! If this keeps up, we'll all die. Kill him. It's the only way we survive. The more ruthless pirates tried rallying the others. Their desperate cries slightly raised morale, and several pirates gritted their teeth and gripped their weapons tighter. Now this is more like it, Luffy grinned. If they'd all surrendered, he might have spared them. After all, Luffy didn't kill for XP alone. But since they chose to fight back, well, that gave him the perfect excuse to wipe them all out. He glanced at his express bar. If I kill all these guys, I'll definitely hit level 13. That thought made his grin even stranger. One pirate, unable to stand the pressure, yelled. He's just a kid, kill him. With a thunderous roar, over 30 pirates rushed out of the crowd and surrounded Luffy. Don't hesitate, attack together. A pirate who seemed like an officer barked orders. Swords, spears, axes, and guns were all pointed at Luffy. Luffy didn't move. Instead, he looked puzzled. That's it. Only this many. Doesn't seem enough for a level up. Oh well, I'll deal with them first. Bang! A bullet whizzed toward him, but Luffy casually tilted his head and dodged. He reached out and snatched a sword mid-swing, then flung it backward. He wasn't trained in swordsmanship, but sheer strength made up for it. Anyone he struck was either torn apart or cut clean in half. In the blink of an eye, nearly 10 pirates were dead. Thud! A blade slashed him from behind, only to clang against his body like hitting steel. It didn't even scratch him. Luffy checked his HP. Down by just 20-something points. Nothing serious, he thought. Zoro still hadn't woken up, but Luffy could tell his attributes were growing stronger by the day, boosting his own stats in the process. He turned and punched the pirate who dared strike him. The man flew through the air and knocked down 3 others in his path. In a matter of seconds, more than half of the attackers were dead. The rest had completely lost the will to fight. But, people have to take responsibility for their choices. If you pick up a weapon, you better be ready to die by one. Luffy snapped 3 necks in a row. That was all it took. The rest fled in panic. Those near the edge jumped into the sea. Luffy didn't chase them. Not worth wasting time for just a bit of XP. Then Luffy paused. Wait, am I getting cocky? Stay away, demon. With the last willing fighter dead, Luffy turned to the trembling crowd at the rear of the ship. That's when a wrinkled, white-haired old man stepped forward and knelt before him. Sir, we were all forced to join the Raging Hammer Pirates. We're not real pirates. Please, spare us. The rest immediately dropped to their knees and wailed. Sir, I was just a fisherman. I had no choice. I used to work on a merchant ship. Please believe us. With dozens of men crying and begging at once, Luffy started getting a headache. He snapped, enough. Shut up, all of you. The ship went dead silent. He checked his express, just over 100 points short of leveling up. All right, he said. Pick out the one among you who's done the worst things. Murmurs and whispers rippled through the group. Luffy growled, hurry up. Instantly, more than 10 fingers pointed at the same man. Luffy walked toward him. The crowd parted without resistance. The man collapsed, slamming his head into the deck over and over, blood spilling down his face. Please, sir. I was wrong. Spare me. I swear I'll change. Luffy said nothing. He gently placed his small hands on the man's head. Crack. His neck twisted with a snap. Ding. The host has killed a regular pirate. Express 45. Luffy's eyes lit up. Pick another one. This time, there was no hesitation. One man was shoved to the front. Before he could even beg, Luffy punched him in the chest. His heart burst on impact. He dropped dead, blood gushing from his mouth. Luffy wiped the blood from his fist, about to speak, when the old man from before quickly cried out. Sir, please. We swear the rest of us are innocent. We were just forced to clean and do odd jobs. We never hurt anyone. He threw himself to the ground and bowed repeatedly. Luffy waved a hand. Fine, fine. Get up. I'm not in the habit of killing innocent people. He glanced at his express, just 13 points away from leveling. His expression turned gloomy. If I'd known, I wouldn't have let those guys jump overboard. He wept silently inside. The others slowly stood up. The old man stepped forward again and bowed. Thank you, sir, for saving us from that nightmare. It's fine. By the way, do any of you know how to read nautical charts? The old man perked up. Sir, I used to be a navigator on a merchant ship. Great. Then show me the fastest route to Kokoyashi village. The man blinked, then replied. Sir, at our current speed and heading, we'll reach Kokoyashi village by tomorrow morning. Luffy grinned. Seriously. I guess that storm helped me after all. Full speed ahead. He turned back to address the group loudly. Since you're all just regular folks, I won't give you a hard time. And no need to call me, sir. Just call me Luffy. At that moment, everyone smiled for the first time. They finally believed they were truly safe. But fate has its own plans. As the group started cleaning up the deck, a pale young man suddenly pointed at Luffy and screamed. You're a demon. The people around him tried to cover his mouth. Luffy, who had been about to rest, turned slowly. His eyes grew cold. Let him speak, Luffy said flatly. The others backed off. The young man, now free, began to cry and shout. You're a murderer. My father, he died trying to protect me. And you killed him. Ah. He collapsed to his knees, pounding the deck in grief. You monster. Why don't you just die? Luffy walked over and gently lifted the boy's head with one hand. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm really sorry, for ever making you think I was a good person. Then, without warning, he grabbed the boy's throat. Crack. Splurt. The boy collapsed. Ding. The host has killed a regular pirate. Express 25. Ding. Congratulations. Express full. Leveling up. Ding. Level up complete. Current level, 13. No one dared make a sound. Luffy walked to the ship's edge, leapt back to his small boat, picked up the unconscious Zoro, and jumped back aboard the pirate ship. Dragging Zoro by the leg, he headed for the cabins. Just before going inside, he turned to the old man and said. Full speed to Kokoyashi. Wake me when we arrive. A quiet and peaceful little town. The village's law enforcer was just and kind, and the local doctor treated everyone with skill and compassion. A large marine base lay nearby, giving the region a sense of order and protection. Being close to the sea, fishing was abundant. The soil was fertile, and farming thrived. The villagers lacked for nothing. Food, clothing, and daily necessities were never a concern. In the age of chaos brought on by the great pirate era, being born in a place like Kokoyashi was a rare blessing. But, as always, fate had other plans. The sun hung high in the sky. Waves rolled in from the horizon, crashing against the jagged rocks, sending up sparkling sprays of seawater, like shattered glass, dancing in protest. As if the sea itself was warning of the storm to come. Far off in the distance, faint silhouettes appeared on the horizon, Few could have imagined that they were the harbingers of nightmares. At the home of Kokoyasi's local officer, Genzo, a young girl with short orange hair sat quietly on a stool. She wore a light summer dress, and from afar, she looked like a tiny, overgrown tangerine. Nami kicked at the floor with her bare feet, then mumbled under her breath. I ran away from home. Across from her stood a middle-aged man in an old-fashioned police uniform, Genzo. Strangely enough, a small pinwheel was attached to the top of his hat, spinning softly with every movement of his head. Upon hearing Nami's words, Genzo clenched his jaw, his face turning red as he tried to suppress something. And then, ha 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 ha, Genzo slapped the table and burst out laughing. So you ran away, and ended up back in the village. Throwing his head back in laughter, he teased. You call that running away? Leaving the house and going back to town? That's the simplest rebellion I've ever seen. Ha ha ha. With Genzo's laughter echoing around her, Nami only lowered her head further. After a while, she muttered softly. Maybe, Aunt Belmere would be happier without us. Huh, why would you say that? Genzo's laughter stopped abruptly. Even the pinwheel on his hat ceased spinning. Realizing she'd said something she shouldn't have, Nami turned away, avoiding his gaze. Because with us around, she's poor. And people in the village don't like me. Belmere had to take care of 2 children alone, working less and earning barely enough. Nami loved reading books about navigation, but they were expensive. So she often stole money, or books, from around the village. Though the villagers never truly hated her, whispers and complaints started to grow. But in Nami's mind, it was all her fault, that Belmere was struggling because of her. Genzo's lips slowly curved into a smile again. The pinwheel resumed spinning. Ha ha. Little Nami's growing up, huh? He remembered the first time he saw her, just a tiny baby bundled in Belmere's arms. Don't worry. When Belmere was your age, she was the worst kid in the whole village. Aunt Belmere, really? Oh yeah, compared to her, you're practically an angel. Genzo turned to look out the window at the village. But then, that same Belmere left the village, became a proud Marine, and came back with 2 kids. The whole village was stunned. Marine. Yep, I'll never forget that day. In the middle of a raging storm, she came back on a tattered naval ship, soaked in blood, carrying 2 children. She shouted. Someone help. These kids have high fevers. Please, call a doctor. Those kids were Nojiko, who was 3, and you, still a baby. But, she told me she found me under a bridge. Haha, Belmere was just messing with you. While Genzo and Nami talked, on a remote coast of Kokoyasi Island, a massive ship docked quietly. From it, tall, looming figures stepped ashore. The villagers remained blissfully unaware of what was coming. Nami. The door to Genzo's house suddenly flew open. A girl slightly older than Nami stood in the doorway. She had soft, wavy purple hair and wore an old pair of overalls. It was Nojiko, Nami's adoptive older sister, 3 years her senior. I knew you'd be here, Nami. Genzo patted Nami's head. Well, someone's come to take you home. Off you go. Just as the sisters were about to leave. Pirates. A loud cry rang out. Genzo's face changed instantly. He shoved the 2 girls toward the back door. Run. It's not safe here, head into the forest. But, Aunt Belmere. Nami tried to protest, but Nojiko, older and more level-headed, grabbed her hand and pulled her into the trees. Their small figures quickly vanished among the foliage. Adults, 100,000 berries. Children, 50,000. Arlong, a towering fish man with a long saw-like nose, declared to the trembling villagers. His crew spread out, inspecting homes for anyone trying to hide. How much have we collected, Karubi? Arlong asked another fish man with a humanoid body and a shark-like face. About 250 million berries, Karubi replied. The villagers clenched their fists in silent fury. That's enough for today, everyone, Arlong said with a wave of his hand. Just then, a pudgy fish man pointed to the distance. Boss, look over there. Smoke was rising from a chimney. Arlong's expression darkened. TCH, almost missed one. The Arlong pirates followed the smoke trail and arrived at Belmere's home. Genzo and a few villagers trailed quietly behind. Inside, Belmere was cooking lunch. She'd argued with Nami that morning and decided to prepare a feast to make it up to her. Maybe I should even open a bottle of wine for them, she mused, smiling. Knock, knock. 2 heavy knocks echoed at the door. Belmere turned. They're back already. Arlong waited outside. It's unlocked. Come in, she called out. The door creaked open, and Belmere came flying out with a long rifle in hand, flipping through the air. Her foot slammed into Arlong's neck, knocking him to the ground. She thrust the barrel of her gun into his mouth. Surprised. This village has a marine, too. What's a big-name pirate from the Grand Line doing in a tiny place like Kokoyasi? For a moment, Belmere was back in her marine days, fierce, cigarette dangling from her lips, eyes sharp. Ha 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 ha. The Arlong pirates laughed loudly. They weren't afraid. They were amused. Belmere's face tightened. She pushed the barrel deeper. What's so funny? Crack. Arlong bit the gun in half. I'm laughing at how weak you humans are. He grabbed Belmere and slammed her to the ground. Just then, Nami and Nojiko, who had run back, saw everything. Nami tried to scream, but Nojiko quickly covered her mouth and shook her head. Crack. Arlong stomped on Belmere's shoulder. Bones shattered audibly. He raised his foot again, aiming for her head. You fool. Genzo rushed in, yelling. Don't throw your life away for pride. Some fights aren't worth it. Some problems can be solved with money. Arlong paused, then lowered his foot. He's right. Adults, 100,000. Kids, 50,000. So, Marine Lady, will you pay, or die? Genzo knelt beside Belmere, whispering. How much do you have at home? Scraping everything together, maybe 100,000, she said weakly. That's enough. Genzo stood and declared. Belmere has the money. I'll get it for you. Suddenly, the octopus fish man Hachi spoke up. Boss, looks like this house was preparing food for 3 people. Belmere invited me and the doctor over for lunch, Genzo lied quickly. We'll go get the money now. They returned with the money and handed it over. There, everyone's paid. The village is safe now, Genzo said. Arlong took the money and nodded. Let's go, men. We're safe, right? Belmere smiled faintly, holding her injured shoulder. 2 kids, 100,000. That money's for them, not for me. I didn't pay my share. Belmere. Genzo snapped. She shook her head, crying. I'm sorry, Genzo. I just can't say I don't have a family. Arlong turned slowly. You have kids. Belmere wiped. I'm only their mother in name, they're still my daughters. Belmere. Mama. Nami and Nojiko burst from the bushes and ran to her. All 3 collapsed into a tearful embrace. I'm sorry. I wanted to buy you so many things, clothes, books, but I never could. I was never a good mother. Belmere wept, knowing this might be her last chance to say these words. So these are your daughters? Arlong said coldly. Belmere stood tall. Yes. You won't harm them, will you? Not if you die obediently. You bastard. Genzo drew his pistol and aimed at Arlong. But before he could fire, Karubi slashed him, leaving deep wounds across his face and chest. Just a worthless human. A lesson's enough, we don't need to kill him, Arlong sneered. Then, he raised a gun to Belmere's forehead. You'll be the first to die, for the foolish crime of love. Belmere closed her eyes. Nojiko. Nami. I love you. Whoosh. A stone whizzed through the air, striking Arlong's pistol. It exploded in his hand. Phew, made it in time. Luffy stood atop a nearby ledge, grinning at the sea of fish men.